Hey everyone, welcome in. Tonight we are doing something a little different, and I am going live for the first time in probably about a month and probably a couple months since I've done it by myself. Tonight we're going to be busting some of the biggest myths in data engineering. There's a lot of noise out there. People are saying that SQL is dead, that Python solves everything, that portfolios are your only way to get a job, and spoiler alert, most of that is absolutely wrong. So while folks are joining, let's start breaking down some of these myths. Myth number one, I've heard this so many times. SQL is outdated. Every probably like 3 to 5 years, something comes along that is going to kill SQL. Well, SQL, being replaced by Python or Spark, AI, NoSQL, it- so many different things over the years. The reality is that SQL is still the backbone of every analytics system that's out there. If you walk into any company tomorrow, you're going to find SQL absolutely everywhere: warehouses, transformations, reports, dashboards, even in Excel Power Queries. If you don't know SQL, you're not going to get far in a data job. So, for those of you that have joined already, drop a hello in the chat. Let me know that you're here, and let me know, are you using SQL pretty much daily right now? Even if you're not in a direct data job, are you using it at all? Love to know. So, myth number two, ETL is obsolete and it's all ELT now. And that one, that one's probably half true. Yes, ELT is everywhere, especially with cloud warehouses and medallion architecture, but ETL isn't dead. If you're working with sensitive data, regulatory requirements, massive files, sometimes you can't just dump the transformation and wait till later. The smart data engineers know how to balance both and know when to use both. Myth number three, portfolios get you hired. Now, this is a big one. I just had a big post on LinkedIn about this one, mostly because I keep on seeing people get on there and say, "Hey, let me help you build your portfolio." Okay, no hiring manager in the years that I was a director, in the years that I've been a hiring manager, I've never asked anybody and actually looked at anybody's portfolio during an interview. Portfolios are fantastic for learning, and use them for that. I'm not saying don't build a portfolio. They help you build skills, they help you create stories that you could use in interview settings. But again, as a hiring manager, I never once hired somebody because their GitHub repo was fantastic. I hired them because they could explain their process and actually talk through the code that they created, right? And they were able to work with the business, especially in the age of vibe coding and LLMs out there. So much of the portfolios that are going on are kind of generated by that stuff, and hiring managers aren't going to care. In fact, I recently, relatively recently, had a mentee that had worked so hard. He had created a whole presentation around this project that he did, created a PowerPoint, even down to creating a PowerPoint presentation that he wanted to show off in this interview that he was having. And I was like, don't be disheartened when you get in there and they're like, no, I don't want to see it. Because oftentimes hiring managers have their own agenda and what they're looking for. And sure enough, he got in there and they said, no, we don't have time for that. We have to get through these questions. And it just wrecked his confidence. So please don't let that happen to you. Don't be the cautionary tale. Use portfolios for what they are. Build up your skills, build up your experience, have those stories ready so that when they ask those questions in the interview, then you could relate well to that question based on the experiences that you had with your projects you did that are in your portfolio. Um, there's a handful of people out there now. Let me know. Has anyone here ever actually had an interview open up your GitHub during an interview session and talk through it? I'd love to know. All right. Myth number five. Um, well, first, I want to say, we busted 3 myths there while people were jumping in. now that there are a handful of people in here, no, yeah, see, no, I mean, I'm just saying, people that hiring managers aren't looking at your portfolios during an interview. Uh, I've in the 25 years I've been in data, I've never once been asked for my GitHub repo during an interview, and again, I've never asked for anybody's doing hiring. So it just doesn't happen. Um, all right. Again, those are three myths, but it busted while jumping in. People are jumping in. Now I want to hear from you. What myths or bad advice have you heard about data engineering or even jumping into data? Let me know down in the chat, and I could take them on live and we could talk through some of them. So, one of the other big ones, right? Big ones right now is AI, right? Is AI going to replace data engineers? I've heard this before. At least once a week, somebody posts that question on one of the videos that I post, and it's a real concern for people. It really seems to be a genuine concern. Here's the thing, right? Is that there aren't a whole lot of junior data engineer positions out there right now, nor has there ever been a lot of junior data engineer positions out there, right? I recently posted one. I had found one that was local here in Knoxville, where I'm at, and I shared it on LinkedIn. And really, because I don't see them real often, so I wanted to share it out to the community. So they happen, they're out there. They've never been real prominent. So AI, it's not that AI is taking away those junior positions. It's just that they were never there defined to begin with. Um, I will say that AI is changing the landscape of data engineering, and you would expect it to, right? You would expect it to make some changes in the tools that we have, in the type of data that we're gathering, in the importance of metadata storage, right? Metadata has become more and more important over the years, but especially with AI coming about, metadata is really important to have stored. And so it is going to change what we do, even how we do it, the tools that are available. That's not any different than it ever has been. They're still not going to need data engineers. Data engineers are not going away. We're still going to need to move data from A to B so that everything is all in one place for those AI systems to get to, so that they can do all the work that they need to do for the business, right? So the data still needs to all get in one place. Are there going to be AI tools that help us kind of quickly get from 0 to 1, right? There are definitely going to be those tools, right? And even things like Lakeflow declarative pipelines that we have in Databricks, and the Lakeflow connector stuff. Those types of things help us get from 0 to 1, so we could spend our time focused on the more heavy lifting things, right? The more technical things, the more complex things that we really want to get to anyways, right? Who wants to sit there and get everything into a bronze layer all day long, right? I mean, that is tedious, boring work. Not that it's not important, it is, but there are tools out there, and AI, I think, will continue to help us get all that into one place quickly and efficiently, so that we could focus on the more interesting work. So, as I take a drink, what questions do y'all have out there? Say hi, let me know where you're from, let me know, how long you've been watching the channel and what brought you to the channel. I'd love to hear from you, and let me know what challenges that you may be experiencing now in trying to get into a data engineering job. I'd love to, have those conversations with you, and let me know what you got. So let's see, we did 1, 2, and 3. We're on myth number 4. Oh, here we go. Quest to success. There are tools that can help you improve. Are there tools maybe that can help you improve as a data engineer? Uh, there are a lot of things out there that will help you improve as a data engineer. As far as tools go, I mean, there's systems that will. There are platforms out there that will help you practice Python, right? that will help you get better at practice at writing your Python. There are tools like the free edition, the Databricks free edition, right? Where you could get in there, there's some preloaded data sets. You could go ahead and practice writing PySpark scripts, right? Notebooks, and even you using things like Lakeflow pipelines and Lakeflow connectors in order to start moving data and get some really tangible experience with those different things, so that when you do jump into the real world, then you at least have seen it before and have used it, right? And done some troubleshooting with it. Um, I really like, you've probably heard me in my videos if you've been around, but I really like that Databricks free edition the last couple months. I'm using it with some of my mentees. I think it's a great tool right now, because you don't have to, my mentees are oftentimes, just getting into it, maybe don't even have a career in data, a job in data yet. And so, cost is an important factor. And so that free edition of Databricks is a good resource. Also, Azure, AWS, GCP all give you, if you haven't gotten into them before, a like $200 to $300 credit up front that you can get in there and play with them, right? And that helps. The other thing that I'll say is that Coursera really has some fantastic courses, specifically the IBM data engineer courses that are in Coursera. Really do a fantastic job of really getting in depth and end to end. The only thing that I would caution you with all the tools is that they are very academic. They're very perfect world scenarios, right? I'll say that, even from some of the people that, again, that I coach and mentor, the biggest thing that I hear from them is that they struggle with finding tools and resources and videos that that really give them the real world practical kind of feedback and experience that they that they really need to get, right. Things like, when this happens, when you get this error in the real world, this is what that looks like. Or when you learn this perfect world star schema and how it looks pretty and perfect in, from an academic standpoint, but you get into the real world and what does that really look like in practice? So those are the things that you kind of miss in tutorials and stuff. So that's kind of what I have for that. Hey. All right, Mark, to break into a data engineer, is it preferable to start from a data analyst role, or can acquiring Databricks certifications open the door to junior data engineer roles? So this is an excellent question. I will say that a lot of data people were analysts at some point first. However, that doesn't mean that you absolutely can't find a data engineer role that you could jump into. Again, cellular sales locally here in Knoxville, recently had a junior position open, and something like a Databricks certification, or for them, probably more like one of the Snow Pro certifications would have been perfect, right? And so I would look at those two, right? Because those are the big hot things right now. The Databricks data engineer associate certification and the Snow Pro data engineer certification are two really hot certifications right now that really will get you far. There's the Azure Fabric one, Azure Fabric data engineer, right one. I wouldn't focus on that one. I would focus on one of those other two. But I will say that you'll have an easier time, Mark, probably jumping into a analyst role first and then moving into an engineer role, or at least a business analyst if you can't find a data analyst role. Anish, if someone is starting in data engineering from scratch, where do they begin? Is there any step-by-step roadmap using books that they can follow so they get applied to experienced data engineering jobs? I could not have better prompted myself for this question. Thank you. So I will say that right now on the channel and in our Discord, I am kind of running and managing a 8-week data engineering fundamentals kind of roadmap, right? To kind of get people up to speed quick. It includes a list of 7 books and 4 Udemy courses uh, that I'm using to help really get people a solid fundamental basis to launch their data engineering career from. Um, so there's that out there. I'll put the link, I'll grab the link here in a second and put it down in the comments for you so that you could take a look at that. Um, but that's what I've got right now. That's one of my favorite things, obviously, since I put it together. But it's a lot of books, right? It's because I think that and I try to balance that with some videos because some people are uh, learn by seeing and some people are learn by reading, and so in this 8 week kind of roadmap, 8 week kind of boot camp, I am doing each week there's a new book and a video resource tied in with it, along with I'm giving you interview question examples. I'm giving you a practical exercise to do based on what we're working on that week, and obviously the links to those resources. All right, I work in a consultancy firm and mostly enhance existing airflow decks with sensors and monitoring them. I don't think I'm learning much, but I can't really complain as my career has just started. Uh, you know what? Enhancing existing airflow decks is decent experience, right? It's not experience that everybody even gets like at all. Um, so being able to do that, um, so much, so much of my work over the years has been taking something existing, right? Whether it is you know, a stored procedure in SQL, some type of, ETL Python script, some, existing pipeline and making adjustments to it, right? There's so much legacy out there that needs to be refactored, reworked, added to, enhanced. You know, Airflow DAGs are one of those types of situations where you're having to enhance some type of existing workflow in order to get the data into it that needs to be there for the business. So I think that that's great experience. Um, I would encourage you to look for obviously other ways to jump into more complicated data engineering, more of the SQL or if you're using Airflow DAGs, they're probably going to be a Python shop, right? And so you know try to find ways to at least look at the code, the rest of the code, right, and familiar yourself with uh, kind of how things are written and how things flow and what that looks like. The Discord is free to join. Let me put the Discord link in there too. I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling up the Discord now, and I'll drop that link down in there. But it's also on the main page of the channel, so take a look there in the meantime while this is pulling up for me. All right. In my opinion, books are not practical with a job. Is there an alternative approach to get the fundamentals? You're right. Books are very academic. They're very generally perfect world, kind of like what I was talking about before. The people that are in my coaching program really the big thing that they get from me is that practical real world kind of what it really looks like when you're in a corporate environment kind of situation, right? Because my background's corporate enterprise type clients and work. So I would agree. Books are not necessarily practical when you get into the real world, but they give you that foundation so that you know how things should be and you could at least strive towards that direction, right? The reality is that, the real world's not perfect. It's not pretty. The data is messy. And the data's messy because people are messy. I mean, that's just it. I'm super excited about this. Jalen, man, uh, congratulations. That's awesome. I can't tell you how excited I am when I see these things. This is awesome. I'm going to screenshot it and I'm probably going to drop it into the community comments later because that is amazing. I want to congratulate and celebrate that with you. That's awesome, man. Quest to success. Thanks for being here tonight. If you can only recommend 3 portfolio projects for you to focus on, which ones would demonstrate the most value and open the most doors for a beginner? Okay, so Nikhil, first of all, I want to recognize that you're here. I want to recognize Nikhil because Nikhil has been one of the subscribers and audience members and part of the community since early on and is always here. Just want to say hi and say that. And I'll get to your question here in a minute. Okay, quest to success. So I want to address this and I want to address it with kind of how I do my mentoring, right? So I want to do it that way because specifically in my coaching mentoring program, I do 3 portfolio projects and I customize those projects specifically to your situation, right? And they're always end-to-end projects, all the way from sourcing the data, all the way through even the visualizations, because I think that that's important for data engineers to at least have some familiarity with, and it shows businesses that you understand how the data relates to the business. So that being said, to specifically address your question, what would those portfolio projects be? The way that I formulate those is I have you go out and grab 5 or 10 job postings that are in your area that are, you look at those job postings and say, this is the perfect job for me. This is exactly the industry, the business that I want to be part of. And because there are so many, there's just a blue million different tools and systems and resources out there for data engineers that show up on those job recs. Getting those 5 or 10 help you to narrow down your focus and really help you to be kind of laser, have a laser precision on what you're going to practice and build up your skill set on. And so take those 5 or 10. If I were you, I mean, I would just take those 5 or 10. If again, I have a coaching program. If you're interested, I'll put the link down in the comments. But if you want to do it on your own, take those 5 or 10 job recs, throw them into an LLM and say, hey, these are the jobs that I'm focusing on. Build me a portfolio project based on whatever the data set is that you want to work with. And when I'm working with my coaching clients, I am telling them, give me a data set that you're excited about, that you're passionate about looking at. And that I do that because then when you're telling those stories about those projects, that excitement comes through. And so that passion, that energy comes through when you're talking about those projects. So that's what I do. Again, Databricks free edition has some limitations, but it does give you a platform to do some practicing. So there's that. If you haven't gotten into Azure, GCP, or AWS before, I would wait until you're getting ready to start doing one of those projects because you have like 90 days to use up those credits and then they disappear. So be sure to kind of wait until you're ready to start your portfolio projects. But build your portfolio projects, do your EDA, do all that, and then go ahead and spin up one of those cloud resources, whichever one you're going to start with, right? Depending on the industry, Azure, AWS is probably going to be one of the 2 major cloud platforms that you're going to focus on. And Azure has like 70% of the market. So it's probably going to be Azure. You're probably going to layer in maybe either Snowflake or Databricks in there somewhere. And again, that's how I'd figure it out. Hopefully that helps you. Nikhil, what's most important to get a job as a data engineer? And hi, yes. So The most important skill to get a job as a data engineer is SQL. I mean, hands down, right? Um, SQL 100% is going to be your skill that you absolutely have to have, regardless of the rest of the tech stack. Um, and you have to have decent SQL skills, right? You have to understand not only how to query, but you have to understand how to create objects, which objects to create, how to create schemas. If you're in Unity catalog, how to create catalogs, how to even, depending on the role, you might need to understand how to grant permissions and handle some of the governance piece. But SQL is going to be a big piece of that. Second, especially right now, I would say is Python as far as actual technical skills. Now, outside of technical skills, the other skill that you're going to have is being able to communicate, right? Having some type of business acumen so that you can communicate these very technical requirements back to stakeholders in a very easy to understand manner. If you're working with construction managers, you can't talk about ETL and all this stuff and understand what you're talking about, right? So being able to relate that in a way that they understand is going to be important. What I actually meant is I don't really get enough time. Oh, read huge books. That's fair, right? We're working, sometimes 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, right? Sometimes more than that. So one of the things that I do recommend, that I do like, especially right now, because from Amazon, you could get a 30-day free trial of Audible. And a lot of the books that are in my 8-week boot camp are actually free with your Audible 30-day free Audible subscription. So Audible. So let me pull this up and throw the link to Audible down here. But Audible's super important, I think, because then you could at least listen to them. Sometimes you could listen to them while you're doing other things at work. Sometimes you could listen to them on your commute to and from work, on your lunch. That way, again, you don't have a whole lot of time to read. I get it. Audible 30-day trial. And again, several of the books are free on that 30-day trial to check out. How difficult is land entry-level data engineer job in Dallas, Texas? So here's the thing, right? Dallas is a big area. Dallas is a hotbed for a lot of tech jobs, right? Dallas, Austin. There's some major corporate hubs in Dallas. So that's the nice thing, right? For if you're locally in Dallas. Here's the thing. So many people want remote jobs. If you can be in person, right? If you can be in office, that cuts down on your competition, right? If you're willing to be an in-office worker, especially right now, so many people want to stick with and be remote. If you're willing to be in office and you're lucky enough to be in an area where there are some in-office roles that you don't have to move and relocate for, then that's going to cut down on your competition for those roles. Entry-level data engineer jobs in general, I mentioned this earlier, but you may not have been here yet. Entry-level data jobs in general are few and far between. And that's not personal opinion. That is not a fault of, because of AI, right? That's correlation, not causation, right? It's always been that way. Entry-level data engineer jobs have always been few and far between. They're out there. They're hard to find, but they've always been few and far between. Your better bet is to jump into an analyst role, which is high competition right now. They're super hot. But the other thing that you could do is find ways in your current role to practice some of those data engineering type things. Find something that you could automate. Find some report that somebody's spending hours a week on that you can try and, at least reduce some of that workload and practice those skills, show your current employer that you have those skills. And a lot of times, once you start showing that you have some of those skills and have an aptitude for it, they'll pick you up and start having you do some of those projects, depending on the role that you have right now. I did that years ago in customer service. I've seen other people more recently do it from a guy that I worked with at one of the companies. He was an IT help desk person, and he started helping out with some of the data engineering stuff, and was eventually able to move into a data engineering role that way. So always an option to do something that way. If there's one book on SQL and data modeling that an aspiring data engineer must read, what do you suggest? So I personally am part of Joe Rice's Discord. He has a great Discord as well. And it is called Practical Data Community. But Joe Rice has a book called Fundamentals of Data Engineering. And it's fantastic. So if you haven't gotten a chance to read that, I would read that. As far as data modeling goes, I still I know it is dated. I know it's been around forever, but I like the data warehouse toolkit. I like the old Gambill book, Gambill methodology. I still think that many corporations and many businesses are striving towards that kind of star schema medallion architecture, dimensional architecture. But those are my two big ones. When reviewing resumes for junior candidates, what's the hidden gem or detail that makes you want to interview them? I'll tell you that I've recently done some interviewing with a business that brought me on to help them build out their data team. And the big things for junior candidates are showing that two things, right? One, showing that you understand the business impact of the work you do, regardless of whether you are in a data role right now or not, showing that you understand how you're impacting the business. Because if you could translate that in your current role, then you could translate that in a data engineering role. The other thing is that you have shown some initiative in your current roles. Again, it's really hard to break into junior data engineering positions, right? So you might find yourself needing to apply for those mid-level engineering positions because it's the only thing that you can find. And so in doing that, show that you've taken some initiative to work on some data projects in the roles that you're in, whether you're in customer service, whether you're in sales, whether you're in maybe marketing or some other role, project man. If you're a project manager, man, there are options out there for you to make things more efficient in your current role. I promise. So that find ways to use data engineering skills in the role that you're in, and put that on your resume. Show that you made a difference. Show that you took the initiative outside of that, and to really push through and try to get that practical real world experience. Even if you can't get direct access to data sets, show that you're willing to connect to figure out how to get things exported, connecting to Excel files, CSV files, and ingesting that, cleaning that, and doing all that. How to pivot from analytics engineer, cloud analyst, modeling analyst, cloud data engineer. Are there roles in this field? There's roles out there. There are a lot of roles. And I promise you go on LinkedIn right now and go to jobs and type in data engineer, and let's see how many come up. I'm just typing in data engineer in here. I mean, it just says 99 plus results, right? But there are, let's see how many pages of this. A lot of pages. I'm at 30, and there's still more. There are 30 pages, at least 20. 20 pages. 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 about 20 jobs per page. I'm at 40 now. So a lot. I mean, 40 times 20, at least 800 jobs, right? Still going. I'm telling you, there's a lot of jobs out there for data engineering. Analytics engineers, they're those are the for those of you that have asked, how do you break into data engineering? Take this list of roles, go and find one of these. Cloud data engineer, right, is a data engineer. I mean, it's just data engineer. Every data engineer is a cloud data engineer anymore, pretty much. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be working with any on-prem databases, but it means that every data engineer position, you're working with some type of cloud environment. The modeling analyst, cloud analyst, I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of those titles. I'm sure that they're out there. Analytics engineers is the thing right now, right? People want analytics engineers. My caution to you, to all of you that may be applying for analytics engineers, is to make sure that when you're doing that, if it's the job that you want for the rest of your life, then cool, be that. If you're applying for an analytics engineer because it's what's available, make sure that you use it to its fullest extent to learn that engineering piece, and then by 3 years jump into an engineering position. If you wait longer than 3 years, you're going to get stuck in that role, and it's going to be harder to get out. You're going to be pigeonholed. You're going to get stuck in that. So don't sit in it for more than 3 years. Is it correct that data modeling concepts, lineage, dimensions, facts, etc., should be a prerequisite before learning tools like Spark and Python? No, I don't think so at all. Do you need to understand data modeling as a data engineer? 100%. Is it more important than understanding Python? Yeah, you need to understand how to model data before you are doing all the cleaning, and because you have to know how to model it in order to put it in its right place, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't do them hand in hand, and it doesn't mean that if you're really passionate about learning Python that you can't just jump into Python and figure out the modeling along the way. You're gonna stumble either way. You're gonna run into things that you don't know, that you can't figure out, that you don't do right. It's your first time. Your first 10 times doing this, you're gonna fail, right? It's gonna happen. You have to break things in order to learn things. It just is. It's part of it. It's part of the learning process. It's part of life, right? I try to tell my 10-year-old daughter that all the time, that failing, getting things wrong, making mistakes is part of life. And it very much is part of the data engineering life, for sure. Understanding dimensional modeling is super important. Should it be a prerequisite before learning Spark and Python? I think it should be in tandem with learning Spark and Python. I think that you need Spark and Python. If you're going to be working with big data, you need Spark and Python in order to do the data modeling. So I would do them in tandem. That's my personal opinion. You're welcome. You're welcome. Currently working as a data analyst, planning to switch to data engineering. Super excited for you. I think that's the route that a lot of people go. I talked to a woman earlier this week that she has been an analyst for 13 years, unfortunately, which is, well, fortunately, but she's looking to get into data engineering, and she has this fantastic, rich background with SQL and all these skills. And yes, the SQL that you use as an analyst is different than the SQL that you use as an engineer, but SQL is SQL. I mean, you're building on that language. It's not like you're learning from scratch. So yeah, I'm super excited for you. That's awesome. Any insights you can share on how to go from failure to become a good data engineer? What core skills are needed to be to better navigate this vast field as it offers. Oh my God, I can't talk. Needed to better navigate this vast field that it offers and is highly valuable. So core skills needed to better navigate the vast field. Again, I harp on some of the soft skills in some of my earlier videos that are on the channel, and recently I've been focused more on the kind of the technical skills. But the big things are, okay, here are my suggestions and warnings. So core skills, data modeling, obviously, like we talked about, right? Understand dimensional modeling, understand medallion architecture. Probably going to jump on a call, I hope, next week, maybe the week after, with Shane Gibson again, for those of you that have been on the channel and seen Shane and I talk. And we're going to go, deep dive on medallion architecture, the good, bad, and the ugly kind of thing. So super excited about that coming up. But anyways, so data modeling is important. SQL is important. Python's super important anymore. You really need those three as far as technical skills. And Python, once you understand, pandas is what everybody learns with, right? Pandas works well most of the time, but when you start scaling up, you need to migrate over into Polars or PySpark. But once you get those things under your belt, then again, like I talked about before, pick those 5 or 10 job recs that you're like, this is my perfect job. Go out, identify those tools and those skill sets in those job recs and focus on those things. Core skills, being able to be adaptable, being able to quickly pick up new software tools, because there have been so many over the years. I started out with, DTS packages and Crystal reports and, Visual Fox Pro, to moving into Oracle and SQL Server and SSIS packages and Discoverer, which is an Oracle product, and OBIEE and business objects. There are so many tools out there and so many different methods and ways to get the data from A to B, to clean it, to model it, to get it to where the business needs it. That focusing on tools is a never-ending endeavor. So focus on being resilient, focus on being adaptable, focus on being coachable by your hiring managers, and focus on those core skills: SQL, Python, data modeling. Again, Kimball, dimensional modeling's been around for ever. Focus on those things. SQL's been around for 50 years. It's not going anywhere. So those are the biggest things that I could tell you. Yeah. 12 years experience in tech support. Dude, props. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So I have two options: data engineer or DevOps. Which one would you recommend? And your goal is to get out of tech support. So I think a more natural path for you from tech support is to DevOps, right? I think that it will be an easier path if you want to eventually get to data engineering. If that's your end goal, I think the natural path for you, especially at this point, is probably tech support to DevOps to data engineering. Now it depends. Now that's dependent on the type of tech support that you've done. If you've done like software tech support and you've worked and seen a lot of the data and you're really used to the programming side of things, then maybe you can jump right into a data engineering role. But generally, tech support, the natural progression is going to be DevOps. And then from DevOps, you could further refine and develop some of those skills and get more intimate knowledge and experience with, databases, and then move into data engineering if you want to go that route. Data warehouse toolkit 30. Yes, absolutely. That's, again, Data Warehouse Toolkit is classic and perfect. And he's got there's a whole package of them, right? I mean, from the Data Warehouse Toolkit, you can do you could get the whole package. And let me pull it up here. Here it is. Gambill's Data Warehouse Toolkit Classics. There's a 3-volume set that you can get, and it's fantastic, just like Niche is saying here. Data Warehouse Toolkit. And that link is all 3 books. So yeah, thank you. When do I do a prod development for the enhanced airflow? When I do a prod development for the enhanced airflow decks, it makes me feel anxious about potentially breaking things, since putting code into prod requires a long, formal process. I've been in environments where there's not a long, formal process, and trust me, that is more terrifying than there being a long, formal process. The more mature the team and the environment is, the more that anxiety kind of fades, because you have all these checks that are there before it hits production. But let me say, there is nothing like hitting the button to deploy something into production and starting to see red in monitors. I mean, there's nothing that will make your stomach turn worse than that. So it'll if it hasn't happened to you, it will. It happens to the best of everybody out there. Again, they're learning experiences. A lot of your job roles and whether or not you keep your job is how well you manage those situations. But again, the more mature the environment, the more checks and balances there are. Again, I would encourage you. Hopefully, you're not in an environment where you're the only data person, but I have been in those environments. But as long as you're not, always have a second set of eyes. No matter how much you test things in development, make sure that you have a second set of eyes to look at something before you move it to production. There's always that chance that you have forgotten to, you've hard coded something in there for testing and you've forgotten to parameterize it so that it, rotates into the production variables. So always make sure somebody else looks at it. That's why we have things like PRs. That's why we have, that's why there are approvers in GitHub, so that somebody else looks at these things. But yeah, there's always, no matter how long you've been doing this, when you hit that button to promote to production, if you don't at least have some butterflies in your stomach, then you probably don't care what you're doing, and it's probably time to change jobs. Just provided call support like account password reset, dispatch tickets for relevant teams, and work on major incident by bringing people together. Then I think probably DevOps is probably the path for you to go. That's my suggestion. Should someone be reading all those 3 books in the toolkit, or read one particular book of those 3? So there are 3. The Data Warehouse Toolkit is the one that everybody recommends that you read, right? The Data Warehouse ETL Toolkit, if I were to rank them, I would rank them in the order that they're listed on like Amazon, right? Data Warehouse Toolkit, Lifecycle, and then ETL. I would almost say that the ETL Toolkit is almost just too outdated to worry about too much. The life cycle is still pretty relevant. And the data warehouse toolkit is probably the most is the most relevant. Um, but those, and then obviously, like I said, Joe Rice's fundamentals of data engineering are the big ones that I recommend. Right. If you don't read anything else, I would read those. And this is Joe Rice's. It's already happened to you, and it's going to, man. It is going to. I hate it, and it sucks, and there's nothing like that dread of seeing that, but it happens. Thank you, and thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here tonight. Problem is that we only have a 10-day sprint. Yep. And there's pressure from my team that we all have to complete all the story. Ooh. That's rough, man. So, first of all, any of you that don't know what sprints are, and if you don't know the difference between waterfall and agile, let me tell you, if you could walk into an interview, and it's funny because it always comes up, right? So when you walk into an interview, they're going to ask you, have you been in an agile environment before? Are you familiar and comfortable with agile? And they might even ask you, what's your experience with that? Here's the reality: is that a lot of businesses really strive to be 100% agile, right? But then there is some CEO, there's some chief CSO or CXO that calls and is like, I need this data like yesterday. And all of a sudden you've got a fire drill and everybody's scrambling to get done this one ticket for this one, executive. So that's called waterfall, right? And so it's what it sounds like. It's kind of stuff rolling downhill and has to get done quick. And fire drills happen. But we also, most businesses strive to be, that agile Scrum methodology where you have sprints. Usually they're 2-week sprints. Sometimes I've been in some situations where they've been 3-week sprints. I really love 3-week sprints because I feel like I could really get my, dig in and really finish a decent sized project. But a lot of them are 10-day sprints. There is oftentimes pressure to complete all the stories in a sprint. There's at least a push, right? I mean, that's what project managers do, right? That's what PMs do, is they come in and they push us to get everything done that we have assigned to us in the existing sprint. But yeah, and there's always pressure from the business, right? There's always pressure from the stakeholders to get things done quickly because they always need the data yesterday. And so many data teams today have turned into these Jira factories, right? Where we're just the only thing we have time to do is crank out the next ticket, right? And we don't have time to sometimes ask the important questions. But I would push you to try and ask the important questions of your stakeholders. Ask, what's the business value of what we're doing? Hopefully that's part of the ticket. Hopefully if you have a really great business analyst or a really great PM that's curating and grooming those tickets, they've asked those questions of the stakeholders. But I would encourage you to really push to ask those questions. But yeah, and often leaves less time to do end-to-end testing. Some of you may be lucky enough to get into environments where you have somebody doing some of the QA stuff. I have a fantastic QA person. He is amazing and does a great job with the QA piece and really helps me to stay focused and to get things done the right way. So and he double checks all the data and stuff for me when I'm done. So yeah, if you're lucky enough to have a QA person, go out and thank them. Oh, Discord link. Let me do that. Change this link here. No limit. Copy. Discord link coming. There it is. All right. Thanks for reminding me. We all need reminders. Great conversation tonight, guys. I've really enjoyed this. Who else has questions? I'm really loving the conversation. What other questions do you have about getting into data engineering and all these things? Absolutely. Again, I want to. I keep on grabbing the wrong cup. So the dangers of working at a desk all day long is that you have like 3 different drinks. You'll notice that throughout the video, I've probably picked up 3 different cups here, and my Pepsi bottle. So, have you heard about the data engineering Zoom camp? No, I'm gonna check it out right now though. Let's check it out together. There's a free 9-week course. I'm going to share. Let's share. I love sharing things with everybody. Share this screen. This. Let me know if this is what you're talking about. Docker. Okay. I don't know that I'd start with Docker. I mean, Docker is important in some environments, but I don't know that that's where I'd start. Hopefully that's not where these people are telling you to start. Zoom Camp, free 9-week course on data engineering fundamentals. I like it. Fundamentals of data engineering, building an end-to-end data pipeline from scratch. Hopefully it doesn't take you 9 weeks to build a data engineering pipeline from scratch. I try to get people through end-to-end projects in 30 to 45 days. Unless you're absolutely like never touched data before, maybe, but part of the learning is doing the work. Self-paced learning. All course materials are freely available. Independent study. Awesome. I'm gonna throw this link if you're okay with it. I'll throw this link down in the comments. So other people could look at it too if you're interested. Course consists of structured modules, hands-on workshops, containerization, and infrastructure as a code. See, that's just not where I would start. I mean, personal workflow orchestration, also important, not the order I would do it in. Data ingestion, data warehousing, analytics engineering, batch processing, streaming, final project. This is cool. I like what they have here. I don't like the order, is my personal feedback. I would drop out containerization and ISE altogether, because I think from a beginner bootcamp standpoint, it's more of a level up activity. I don't want to overwhelm anybody. Workflow orchestration, I would put at the end. At least maybe after streaming and before final project. Yes, I would put it towards the end. Data ingestion, absolutely. Reading APIs, so important. If you have it, in fact, like most of your data sets out there that you would do in an independent end-to-end project are going to be APIs. There are some really, if you are a nerdy person like me, you see my nerdy poster, you see my Doctor Who poster. There are APIs like Rick and Morty. There are APIs like Marvel that if you're nerdy and that's what you want to do, that's what interests you, then hit up those APIs and pull the data and clean the data and do some analytics with them. But there are also really cool APIs when it comes to like I'm really passionate about education. And so there are really cool public APIs and data sets around education and how much particularly like US states spend on education per year. And and like my capstone for my master's degree was pulling all that data, cleaning it, ingesting it, and then doing some data science projects around predictive analytics on how if you increase your budget for education for your state by X amount, it shouldn't raise the education level of your citizens by X amount, by Y amount, right? So there's anyway a ton of data sets out there. A lot of them are API driven. Yeah. Oh, on Reddit. This one's on GitHub. Maybe it's probably the same one, I would guess. ER modeling is absolutely you need to understand. For those of you that don't know what ER stands for, it is entity relationship. Went blank for a second. But it's basically those diagrams where you see all the tables and you see how they relate to each other. It's the concept of one to many, many to many, one to one, and just showing all the interrelationships between your tables and your model. And so super important. Yeah, I would absolutely recommend learning ER modeling after you learn the practical stuff, right? Here's the reality. I've literally taken pen and pencil and drawn out my ER diagrams before, right? And there's tools out there like Irwin. There's tools out there like Lucid. Lucid Charts can connect directly to your databases and and pull those those tables and stuff and help with some of that diagramming. But I like when I'm from scratch developing something and there's like no existing data models. I like actually writing it out and drawing it out, and so being able to do that is a great skill to have. I wouldn't put it at the front of my learning. I would put it somewhere towards the middle after you've learned the more hands-on practical stuff to be able to move the data from A to B. Nobody's going to expect a junior or even a early mid-level data engineer to be able to draw a complex ER diagram. And most of that work is going to be done by tools like Irwin and Lucid and things like that. But yeah, it's still important to be able to do. And again, when you're starting a project from scratch, whiteboarding it and writing it out by hand's an important skill to have. Do you think AWS market share is either declining or Azure is taking over in rapid speed? Azure is taking a lot of the market share. I'll say that there are. It depends on what kind of shop it is, right? It depends on what kind of business it is. Some businesses, I've seen some companies have both, where they have some use cases where they are in Azure, and there are other parts of the same business that have AWS accounts. So some have both. So don't neglect that piece just because you see Azure on a specific job rec. It doesn't necessarily mean that another part of the same business isn't using AWS. I will say that Azure's taking over. I think personal experience. I have a close relationship with Databricks myself, just because of some of the businesses that I consult with have a close relationship with Databricks. But personal experience tells me that the increased market share of Azure has in some part been driven by Azure's close relationship with Databricks. Oh yeah, that's the Okay, what really makes you stand out if you're currently targeting data engineering roles? Some say it's the business understanding, but what it really is when it comes to the technical side. First of all, I also harp on the business understanding. I think that your ability to understand how what you do relates to dollars and cents in the business is important. I also think that from a technical standpoint, if you have a deep understanding of the tools that they use, right? I think it's going to be what stands out. You can't go deep in everything. You know, I have a video out there where Shane Gibson and I are talking about T skills, right? And so the concept of T skills is that you kind of have this, you know, shallow knowledge in several things, but you go deep in one specific thing, right? And so basically that means that you focus on Azure, or you focus on uh, Databricks or Snowflake or whatever that case may be, and you become like an expert, you become a master in that skill set, in that kind of overarching program or tool, and you're kind of, you know, you're kind of putting your eggs in, you know, a lot of your eggs in one basket. But again, like we talked about before, it doesn't mean that you can't quickly adapt into another tool, right? If you were really good with Azure, maybe you're focused on Azure and Fabric and Synapse, and you've gotten really good at using those Azure resources. It doesn't mean that you can't jump into Databricks, right? If you don't have some, as long as you have some Python background. Um, so I think, again, from a technical standpoint, your ability to write clear, efficient SQL and Python and be able to adapt into whatever tools in whatever their tech stack is the biggest thing. Show that you're willing to learn. Is it possible to break into data engineering from a cloud DevOps role? Yeah, I think especially if you're in a DevOps role where you're using like a lot of Terraform, where you're using maybe some Python to automate some of your workloads. You know, if you're in a DevOps role, you probably are really familiar with Git, right, and version control and that types of stuff. That type of stuff. You're probably intimately familiar with the kind of the data environment of the business that you're working in. Um, and so those things, those skill sets translate well into a data engineering role. And having that background and access, level of access, translates well into a data engineering role. As if you're in a role like that, like your easiest path is probably to get in with and get, you know, get familiar with and talk to your data team or teams that are in the business that you're in, and try and, you know, negotiate your way in that way. The Pokemon data from Kaggle is kind of weird. It's yeah, it's not that you can't figure out ways to model it into Snowflake schema. Um, Probably its star schema would be maybe a little too conformed, not conformed enough. But yeah, I like the I like the Marvel data. The uh, Rick and Morty data was neat. Again, I like the education data. It was the education is important to me. Hi. Uh, any resource to learn ER modeling? I do. I do have a resource to learn ER modeling. Um, so I personally like this database systems design. Um, it's kind of pricey though. I like that, but it's kind of pricey. So uh, yeah, the Marvel data is an API. So, and I did not to self promote, and I will tell you up front that this video is one of the early videos that I did. And so it's rough. It's from a production standpoint, it's rough. Um, but I did a kind of walking through an end-to-end ETL project with that Marvel API, specifically with like Synapse and connect, using pipelines and Synapse to connect to that API. But this is the video. If you're interested, you can check it out. Again, forgive me, it's rough. It was one of the early ones that I did. I didn't know what I was doing when it came to filming and anything, but take a look at that. If nothing else, the links to getting to the Marvel API and setting up your account and stuff is in there. AWS data engineer, but don't see much. There are fewer and fewer AWS data engineers. I love AWS though. My thing between Azure and AWS is that Microsoft has always done such a fantastic job of lowering the bar to entry for people so that they can quickly jump into a tool. And they did that with cloud, right? Unfortunately, that also meant for cloud, it also meant that they lowered the bar to run up really high cloud bills. But as an AWS data engineer, there are fewer and fewer job opportunities. I would take a look at Azure. It is way easier than everything you're doing in AWS. It is different, but it is 10 times easier than everything you're doing in AWS. If you're in AWS now and you're proficient with using those tools, like all the Elastic services, I mean, S3s very easily translate to ADLS. AWS Glue kind of translates to ADF and Synapse. Not really. It's not really a one for one, but it's comparable. The Elastic services in AWS are, and spinning up Fargate instances and EC2 instances are things that you don't generally have to worry about as a data engineer in Azure. Generally, those things are usually you're using things like ADF and Synapse, or you're jumping into Databricks. Sometimes, depending on the environment, you might have like a Kubernetes cluster or something, and you might have an AKS instance spun up in Azure that you're Dockerizing your containers or your Python scripts in and having them run in that. But generally, everything you're doing in AWS is 10 times more technical than what you'd be doing in Azure. It will be, I think it will be easy for you to transition. As far as best resources, I like the Microsoft Learning stuff for that. Microsoft has some free learning, and Microsoft has some free learning days. Like if you go in and register for their learning stuff, every now and again, probably every 6 weeks to a couple months, they have free learning days where they're doing kind of live tutorial type work. And so I would take advantage of those. Which cloud provider is now leading in the data space? I think we just talked about that. Azure. Generally, Azure is what's leading in the data space right now as far as cloud providers. There's an uptick in Google and GCP, particularly in the European countries. I know that I have some friends, and one of my coaching clients lives in Europe, and I know that from talking to them that GCP's had an uptick there. Yep, that's what I have to say about that. just explored DevOps, but less interesting than D. Yeah. It's okay to start with SQL, Python, data modeling, PySpark, Databricks, Data Factory. It's fast to start. Or am I missing anything important? No, I think that if you hit those things, you've got what you absolutely need, right? Um, yeah, data modeling, Python, SQL. I mean, understand distributed computing, right? Understand um, the importance of clustering and partitioning, and how that impacts your things like your Databricks bill, and and I would I would add in distributed compute, especially if you're going to go that Databricks route. I would add in distributed compute. You're welcome. You're welcome. Is DBT taking over much of the work done by Spark? Nope. Uh, I don't see. So again, it depends on the tech stack of the business. Um, and for Databricks, and I keep on going back to Databricks environments, right? But for Databricks environments that are in Spark, right? They Databricks has a lot of tools and a lot of built-in features already that handle a lot of those things. Um, right? Because Databricks has things like liquid clustering. Databricks has the DQX library, right? Which if you don't know this yet, then and I did a video a week or two ago. DQX is the kind of newish Databricks data quality library where it does a lot of that data quality stuff for you. Not for you. You have to define it. You have to define your rules, and and it will even like quarantine the records that valid, that are invalid. But DQX, if you haven't checked it out, go out and check out the DQX library. I'll link the video in the chat. Maybe. Yep. DQX. And in that, if you go to that video and go to the description, then the link to the the GitHub repo for that library is in there too. But check out DQX as far as data cleansing and data quality type stuff. Honestly, I still see most businesses using just notebooks, using, especially with, there's so much to be done with like flow declarative pipelines, which are the old, used to be called DLT, right? And the lake flow connector pipelines, lake flow connectors. So much is done there that handles a lot of the ingestion, and with the DLT slash the declarative pipelines, then you could do a lot of the data quality there as well. And with DLT, there's no way to quarantine those records yet, but that's a feature enhancement that should be coming out Q4. Just talked to Databricks rep earlier this week. And again, you could use that DQX library to do a lot of your quality control and stuff. But honestly, I see a lot of businesses still use just that are in Databricks, still just using notebooks and not adding DBT on top of it. But yeah, you're welcome. Well, paid tools like, oh my God, please don't mention Informatica. I hope so. That's my I'm not a big fan of Informatica. I've used Informatica. I hate Power Center. But people use it, and I get it. Um, People that have been on it, companies that have been on it forever, continue to use it. Um, ICS, which is sometimes called IDMC. But ICS, their cloud offering is considerably better, especially when it comes to uh, creating and utilizing APIs. Especially since with like Power Center, you kind of had to write a JavaScript to go out and retrieve and loop through API stuff. But so ICS does a little bit better than Power Center, but I hope so. I don't think that Informatica is going anywhere anytime soon because there are some um, businesses and entities that need that level of governance. So until other cloud tools become more in line with those more stringent regulations, I don't think that they'll go away. That's me. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for jumping on with me tonight. I've really enjoyed this. If you all have any other final questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat now. I appreciate all of you for joining me tonight. I love doing these when I get a chance. So if they continue to be popular, I'll start jumping back on more often. Yeah, I concur. And here's the thing: Informatica, Talend, there aren't a ton of companies that are on those, right? I mean, there just aren't. There are some, right? Probably as many as are still using COBOL, um, but probably the same ones that are still using COBOL. But hopefully, eventually, those companies will migrate to one of those other ETL tools. But yeah, I feel for you that you're stuck in using that. Yeah, the Talon UI. I've only seen the Talon UI. And seen Talon. I've never actually worked with it. So the fact that you compared it to Informatica gives me some shivers. Thank you very much. Talon documentation's hard to find. Probably as hard as it is to find companies that are using it. Awesome. Well, I will let you all go. I want to just thank you all again. I appreciate everybody jumping on with me. Hope that you are getting something out of the channel and learning and growing towards the careers that you want to be in. And always let me know down in the chat. Send me an email and let me know if there's ever any way that I can help you. And I will talk to you all again soon. Thanks.